So, uh, and I'll invite Rebecca to go ahead and share her screen while I do the introduction. But Rebecca Coral is the coordinator for trail resources at the Trans-Canada Trail. And she came to that job from academia and industry with previous roles at nonprofits, focusing on environmental conservation and tourism. She holds a double degree in environmental studies and biology from Wilfrid Laurier University, an MA in recreation and leisure studies from the University of Waterloo, a certificate of university teaching from the University of Waterloo as well, and is currently completing her doctorate at the University of Waterloo. She has also taught at the post-secondary level in geography and tourism. Her past and present research evolves around quantitative research on outdoor recreation and trail user behavior, well-being, and constraints working with conservation areas and trail associations, which has aided her role at the Trans-Canada Trail, optimizing resources and assisting with trail sector research. Please join me in welcoming Rebecca Coral.
All right, good morning, everyone. My name is Rebecca Coral. As already been mentioned, I'm the coordinator of trail resources at Trans-Canada Trail. I do work on Michael Goodyear's policy and stakeholder relations team, and I'm excited to be here speaking with you all today. So thanks for having me. Which button is going to advance this slide? This one. All right. Before we get going today, I just wanted to acknowledge that the Trans-Canada Trail is situated on the traditional territory of the First Nation, Inuit, and Métis people from coast to coast to coast. Trans-Canada Trail acknowledges that the trail includes land and water routes that were created and used both historically and presently by Indigenous peoples as seasonal travel and trade routes. So for today's presentation, I'm just going to be introducing our organization, for those of you who don't know, the trail itself, and then some of our resources, tools, and research that's going on at Trans-Canada Trail that we have available to the trail sector to use and learn from. All of these resources that I'll speak about today are available on our website. There's also a handful of QR codes in this presentation if you want to scan and save those links while I am speaking. So just before I dive into the trail itself, I just want to do a little background on Trans-Canada Trail. So we're one of the few countries in the world that can lay claim to a national trail, particularly one this vast. Bhutan and Israel are the two others. So our national trail is one of the world's longest at over 28,000 kilometers, or roughly 17,000 miles. And it's the story of dreamers and doers. Our two visionaries, Bill Pratt and Pierre Camus, envisioned a national trail that would connect people across this country to nature and also to one another. So that was in 1992. They had that vision. And then 25 years later, in 2017, during Canada's 150th year, the trail celebrated the milestone achievement of actually being connected coast to coast to coast. So in 2022, we also celebrated our 30th anniversary at Trans-Canada Trail, our 28,000 kilometer trail connecting all of Canada's provinces and territories, inclusive of beauty, vitality, and the cultural and natural history of our country. We have land and water trails from the Arctic to Atlantic to Pacific Oceans. We have almost 500 trail sections that goes through roughly 15,000 communities, and 80% of Canadians who live within 30 minutes of our trail. As an organization specifically, we are a charity. We receive the majority of our funding from the Government of Canada, but we also are significantly funded by individuals, corporations, and entities across Canada. We have various departments at Trans-Canada Trail, so it isn't only the trail team. We have philanthropy, communications and marketing, government relations. So when you have time, take a look at our website to kind of get a whole holistic overview of what goes on at Trans-Canada Trail. Today, I'll only be speaking kind of about trail resources that we have available from the trail team. At Trans-Canada Trail, we don't own or manage any of the trail sections. We see ourselves as stewards for the various sections that make up the trail. We support our local owners and operators to make sure that they have the services and support they need for their portion of the network in their community, making sure we can leverage opportunities, give them the funding and resources they need to make sure they're sustaining and improving the trail that provides the services and recreation pieces that it was intended to at the outset. Not only for their individual communities, but for the provinces and country as a whole. TransCanada Trail is a national trail sector leader within Canada. We work to ensure that the quality of recreational trails offerings, services, and research that's being provided is being leveraged by our community trail network partners, and that we're also leveraging the great work being done by our community partners at all levels, increasing the knowledge and skill set they have, as well as showcasing them on a national level. About the trail itself, so you kind of see this little map inset here, and you saw the map on the last slide. We have a connected network of recreational trails, so it's 28,000 kilometers or just over 17,000 miles. It's a multi-use network of trails, so it's not just hiking. It's made up of cycling, cross-country skiing, as well as paddling trails. There's lots of ways for people to experience the different landscapes across Canada on our trail. In 2017, we had our connected designation, and since then, we've evolved significantly as an organization, both in capacity and scale. For just some facts, but 4 out of 5 Canadians live within 30 minutes of the trail. We roughly connect 15,000 communities across every province and territory, and we act as stewards working with about 500 plus local community groups for both stewardship, but also research and promotions. Because we work with so many different stakeholders and network partners, in 2017, we did some internal reflection. We are based off of the network of partners, of stakeholders, and community members. And so we did a huge consultation with consultants, with the government partners, with trail partner organizations on what we're doing well, what we should be doing for them, and really what role TransCanada Trail could populate within the trail sector Canada that was already missing. Because we're a national entity, we were able to take on some of the responsibility for that provincial organizations weren't able to manage. And that's kind of how we came up with these 6 strategies. We evolved into this opinion-driven strategy for what was next for the trail sector. We don't only focus on connection, but also as we function as like a trail facilitator that promotes recreational trails and resources. And so just really briefly to go over these 6 strategies for success. Our trail excellence, TE Trail Excellence for All, we wanted to make sure that the trail was an experience that could be utilized for as many people as possible. We've grown as an organization to start growing and improving accessibility programs and inclusion for First Nations communities as well. For resilient trail sector, we want to make sure the trail is being sustained not only for sustainable funding models, but also maintenance grants, research on how we can build back the trail better, and as well build the trail in a climate resilient fashion for the future. Amazing experiences. We want it to be exciting. We want it to be safe. We want to have attractions that aren't just utilized by communities, but also one that people across Canada just want to use for things like mental health, physical health experiences as well. International and domestic tourism. I think most of the world saw a great uptake during COVID in outdoor interest, but we've developed this great asset across Canada. And there are so many areas across Canada that are still seeking, like communities, they're still seeking to facilitate greater audiences. They want to bring people into their communities and showcase what they have using their TransCanada Trail sections. And so we're looking at helping these groups increase tourism, increase their audiences, but in a sustainable and regenerative fashion so that the community is supportive, but we're also, working to make sure we're mitigating any social or environmental impacts with these initiatives. Live to digital experiences. So this is an area that we're still investigating right now, but we want to make sure that our resources available, so like our web maps, our classification tools, things like that are promoted, and how we can utilize other digital applications to promote the trail. So things like augmented reality, for example. And then last but not least, supporters at the center. We want to make sure that we have a sustained core of donor and corporate support so that we have the longevity to make sure that this great asset that we've created is going to be sustained and evolve into the future. We have a couple of funding programs available here at TransCanada Trail. Just to kind of highlight the ways that we support our trail network partners, we have a trail funding program that consists of 5 streams that are all listed on this slide here. They fall into the trail funding program, but they're not all available all at the same time in the year. So trail infrastructure, major repairs, destination development, accessibility and inclusion. And then we have 2 standalone programs, the Youth Employment Funding Program and the Trail Care Grant Program. the Youth Employment Funding Program is really essential because we're making sure that we're investing in the next generation of trail builders, trail stewards, volunteers. We're giving them the skills and opportunities to be involved in the trail sector while addressing the need to engage with more of the generations and make sure that they are stewards in the future. The Trail Care Grant Program specifically is for the means of providing maintenance to the trails. So not just the construction of them, but making sure that we're supporting organizations in, minor repairs, things that are making sure their trail is going to exist in their community for the future. In terms of resources at TransCanada Trail, all of these resources that I talk about today are available to the public. They're not just available for a Canadian context. They can really be used globally, but I'm going to go through a number of resources. And, after the presentation, if you still have questions, we'll have a question answer period. But if something comes to mind later on, just feel free to reach out to TransCanada Trail and we're happy to chat with you. So one of the bigger things we have at TransCanada Trail is development checklists. So these were kind of created to support trail organizations. They were identified through knowledge gaps and needs. So we have obviously a lot of larger groups that are municipalities. They might have all of this information on hand. They've been doing trail projects for years, but the smaller trail organizations, the smaller municipalities and communities approached us because they needed the information to implement pedestrian bridge projects, to understand what needs to happen in overhead power utility corridors. And so we created these checklists to help them create better experiences, make sure they had the support they needed. They knew who to identify in their projects, whether or not they need engineers or planners and things like that to guide them through. So these are available to on our website and to all of our trail partners. The other tools that we have are things like our maintenance and costing tools. So these are downloadable. They're interactive in that you can change all of the numbers, the categories, the currency as well. And so these tools give groups an understanding of cost to build, cost to maintain, and this is over the full life cycle of a trail. So not just the initial building, but the lifespan. So smaller organizations or ones that aren't as sophisticated as large municipalities, they can see the impacts of changing surfaces as a capital project, as well as operational savings. They can look at their decision-making options and the long-term impacts of these decisions while also looking at the full cost of the project. Again, obviously, we're a Canadian organization, but these can be downloaded and changed in the back end to make sure that you're accounting for the currency variance if you're an American organization or any global organization that wants to use these interactive tools. Our next resource, there's a QR code here, but this is the National Guidelines for Classifying Multi-Use Trails in Canada. So this is a report that's available on our website with a few other resources. And so these guidelines for classifying trails were intended to better match trail descriptions that are available online with the real life experience that the person is having on the trail. So trying to match expectations with skills and the trail itself. We collect data through an online platform. There's a number of attributes that people go through and fill out when they're classifying the trails, whether that's consultants or the trail organizations themselves. And the output is automated. So it comes out with a trail difficulty rating, a trail experience, and then a preparation statement. And so this classification guide is different than most of the classification structures you might already know of, because it looks at the attributes of the trail itself, but it comes up with the difficulty rating based on the experiences and usage. So for example, a long trail being used in the summer may be scored more difficult than a trail that's used, solely the same trail that's used by snowmobiles in the winter that could be classified as easy. So the attributes of the trail and the environment are not changing, but the experiences and usage are. And so for this reason, we came up with an independent methodology to classify our TransCanada Trail experiences. We have a few standalone resources and research that's been completed at TransCanada Trail to date. So again, these are all available just at that link at the bottom, tctrail.ca/trail-resources, as well as through QR codes. To begin with accessibility, we have a number, there's a lot of resources available on this page for guidelines for planning and designing all-persons trails. If you're unfamiliar with this term, an all-persons trail welcomes everyone by providing inclusive outdoor experiences for all. It's going beyond common accessibility standards. All-persons trails provide people with a wide range of needs and experiences. So it could vary from trail to trail from the trail surface that's available, but often these experiences include a firm trail surface. They have accessible infrastructure available, specific navigational tools, experiential features that are available, like tactile elements and sensory gardens, and many more that are available to look through on this website. But all of our documents that outline the planning, facility types you might want to look at, signage best practices, even just different types of tactile elements and sensory gardens that you can include to create immersive experiences, as well as like website content, policy and legislation in a Canadian context, however. This hasn't changed. The other thing that we have going on at Trans-Canada Trail is our trail visitation reports that have been developed in coordination with Propulso. So Propulso is a ethical data intelligence platform, and they specifically, we started working with them, and in late 2023 is when we launched these reports. So we began by providing these to our network trail partners specifically. The platform Propulso uses consensual mobile data for a variety of purposes. At Trans-Canada Trail, we saw that Propulso had this vast data available for what we were looking for in order to understand our goal of how many people use the Trans-Canada Trail. That was kind of how this originated, and how these reports originated. But we created these customized reports in collaboration with Propulso. We kind of gave them the ideas, the stats, the things that we were hoping to look at. They're specifically for greenways at this point in time, but the reports provide overall visitation numbers and the ability to look at this on a day-to-day basis, on a month-to-month basis. They have some tourism information about speed. As you can see on the slide, there's also visitors' entry and exit points. And then these were, it's important to note that these aren't supposed to replace counters. So, counters can provide this kind of data, but they're supposed to be complementary to counters because, again, this data is based on consensual mobile data. So it's not just everyone's mobile data, but it's based on consent settings. So at Trans-Canada Trail, the individual network partners are able to request trail visitation reports annually. And so since launching these, the groups that we've connected with about how they're using them have used them for things like just understanding general operations, how many people are using the trail, but also related to tourism planning, trying to get grants because they're able to now demonstrate and quantify what's going on their trail. They're being used by municipalities, but they're also being used by smaller not-for-profit and volunteer organizations that are managing sections of the trail every day. Recently, Propulso has been able to quantify for 2023, these are our early results, they're kind of still in flux, but they are able to take our entire network trail that we've mapped and take a look at how many people are using our trail. So this is really exciting for us. In 2023, these results showed that there are about 240 million daily visits, and that throughout 2023, roughly 14 million unique visitors came to the Trans-Canada Trail. Just a couple of examples. So some of our network partners were able to connect back with us to tell us what they're using Propulso reports for. So the North Star Rail Trail is in British Columbia. They manage roughly 26 kilometers of trail. They were thrilled being able to even just have the number of unique visitors visiting their trail because they were able to request funding and obtain grants to keep their society operational. So you can see on this slide here that their unique numbers are displayed by month. This was a report for 2022. And this is just kind of one of the ways that smaller organizations are using these reports. Some of the other groups that got back to us were let us know that they were looking at all of the entry and exit points along their trail because they were hoping to conduct research. They were hoping to improve their signage. They were hoping to provide better infrastructure and look at things like waste management. Another Ontario-based group is Frontenac County, and so they have used our reports quite extensively at this point, more for policy and planning applications. They worked with their neighboring municipalities in 2023 and early 2024 to set baseline metrics for their 350-kilometer loop that a couple of trails form. They established their overall tourism baseline for the 4 trails. They're able to support multiple grant applications with these statistics. They established a baseline visitation for a market readiness assessment for their 350-kilometer loop. And as well, they requested specific seasonal reports. So they were looking for a comparative analysis of a couple of trail sections with and without summer season motorized use in order to create a policy for their municipality. And so these decisions, were substantial for them in order to be able to back up their policy decision making to both, government, fellow municipalities, as well as the public. And New Brunswick on the other side of Canada here. The town of Riverview is a smaller municipality. They had a number of trail events and initiatives that take place on their trails. And so they were hoping to inform policy development surrounding user modalities, both for accessibility and infrastructure repairs. They were looking at things like their holiday lighting program in November that brings in a significant amount of tourism. They needed to look at accessibility projects that might be related to these bigger tourism applications. And then Niagara Parks Commission, which is also in Ontario, was thrilled to have these reports because they have a lot of non-traditional trail areas where things like counters and physical infrastructure wasn't able to help them understand visitation numbers in their catchment area. And so being able to have these kind of, what I guess were considered non-traditional methods at this point in time was really huge for them because they were able to map out, entire botanical garden, not necessarily large trails like we would consider going across Canada, but their whole parks area. And as well, they're actually looking at their whole Niagara Parks Commission property because I'm sure you saw in the news, but Niagara Falls was part of the path for the total path of totality for the eclipse just earlier this week. So they'll be getting that data kind of soon. It's really exciting for them to look at where people were congregated to be able to compare their tourism numbers, their regular tourism numbers with, these big mega events that might take place. The other thing that we have going on at TransCanada Trail is kind of an evolving project. Last fall, we published the economic impact report. So the benefits of connecting Canadians, the economic, environmental, public health impacts of the TransCanada Trail. So we worked with a US-based research agency called eConsult Solutions, and the report focuses on economic, environmental, and health benefits to Canadians. This is available on our website. You can also scan the QR code there. But just to highlight some of the major findings from the report, the TCT provided roughly $82 million in ecosystem benefits, $1.7 billion in avoided healthcare costs, and roughly $23.1 billion annually in economic impact. And so we do have the methodology report that's available. So within this first report that I just mentioned, there's a number of case studies from across Canada. We tried to grab at least one per province and territory. So this example here is of the Great Lakes Waterfront Trail, and that's in Windsor. And so the economic impact analysis, these are kind of just snapshots of each of the areas across Canada. But Windsor in particular is kind of exciting for TransCanada Trail right now. Because Windsor shares a border with Detroit. They're currently finishing up or halfway through the building of the Gordie Howe International Bridge. But we recently announced that TransCanada Trail is going to be a part of this trail. And so it's our first international, connection for TransCanada Trail. But this report has a number of other case studies in it, and the methodology, there's a separate methodology report that's available to understand how the province by province and city case studies were calculated and quantified. In the future, this report's going to lend itself to expanding through new reports, things like multipliers from trail tourism for jobs, being able to use this information in coordination with the Propulso research to understand health benefits of the trail and create more case studies for trail research like waterways. Some of the campaigns that we've had go on this year. So in early January, we have a campaign called Laws to Oz that focuses on mental health benefits. And so kind of all of this data and research we have going on at TransCanada Trail is able to come together to correlate all of these campaigns, all of this data, just to really provide really invaluable research that can be applied not just at Trans-Canada Trail, but for other trail organizations that are hoping to evolve and contribute to the knowledge to be able to get themselves funding in the future through research like this. We have a couple other just quickly resources and research that are available. So we have best practices on signage available. We do have a webinar series that you can join. You can visit our website and sign up for our Trail Talk newsletter. It kind of highlights any webinars that we have upcoming. We offer them both in English and French. We work with another research agency called Leger. We do trail user surveys. So we're just working on launching our 2024 trail user survey, but the past results from both our accessibility survey, our trail user survey, and then our Canadian census, trail sector census are available on our website to look at. On that note, the 2024 trail sector census is still ongoing. It's open until the end of April. We're doing it in partnership with American Trails. So we're hoping to collect the state of the trail sector across North America to be able to compare Canada, the US, kind of opportunities and gaps that we might be facing, across the continent as well. I will say that we have had some feedback from American audiences. So if you're sitting there thinking, I've looked at this and I haven't taken it yet, please do. We've added a number of options to say this isn't applicable to my organization, or, not applicable overall, that you can, maybe you don't know the answer, you don't have to answer it, but we did add an open-ended box at the end. So that if there is any feedback you want to provide, that option is there. It also helps us guide the future versions of this trail sector survey so that it is more applicable to all the different organizations that are out there managing trails, organizing trails, working with volunteers, working in a paid or volunteer capacity. So you can scan and take the survey with that QR code. It's available on our website as well. American Trails will be continuing to advertise it till the end of April, but you still have some time to sit down and take this survey, and we would appreciate your participation. And last but not least, before questions, Trans-Canada Trail was happy to be able to bring the World Trails Conference to Canada for the first time. So it's being hosted in Ottawa, Canada, from September 30th to October 3rd in coordination with the World Trails Network. They just announced some of the keynote speakers, and the program is being announced, I think, early next week if it's not already out. So there's a lot of great sessions to join. There'll be a lot of interactive workshops you can participate in. And as well, it's in Ottawa. September 30th is the National Day of Truth and Reconciliation in Canada. So there are also some other opportunities to participate in learning and reflecting on Indigenous reconciliation. And that's all I've got for today. So thank you. And I will be happy to answer any questions that might have come up while I was chatting.
Great, thanks a lot, Rebecca. Let's give Rebecca a round of applause. Great stuff that the Trans-Canada Trail is working on. Does anybody in the audience have any questions? Go ahead.
Yeah, Coral Wilkie, Parks and Rec, interpret. And I'm just curious because I also have to be a rep for Freedom Chairs. Do you guys, does your organization have capability to like rent equipment out, like say trail adaptable wheelchairs for people that might want to use them to access your trail? Do you have any kind of component like that for your organization?
So again, the Trans-Canada Trail our organization specifically doesn't manage or own any of the sections of the trail. But that being said, and I think, please feel free to correct me if I misheard you. It is kind of hard to hear, but you were asking about resources available, and equipment available for people using the trail. A lot of our partners do, and some of our funding programs also will fund the purchase of that equipment for particular trail organizations. And obviously through our all-person guidelines and some of our trail funding programs, we work with our organizations to make sure that we're creating accessible trails where possible.
I saw one on the chat about linking to other trails, and we actually had somebody from Rails to Trails Conservancy yesterday talking about trails in Detroit. So anyway, maybe it's a two-parter. Are you looking to link any more trails, or is the network kind of complete? And then tell us more about the international connection and how that works with going from Windsor to Detroit.
Yeah, so at TransCanada Trail, because we work with the government of Canada, so we get a lot of our funding from the government. One of those organizations is Parks Canada. And so with Parks Canada, we do have a number of goals and metrics to meet. And so we are continually expanding the TransCanada Trail. We're adding actually, I'm not going to say a percent because I'm not confident on it, but there's a certain percent we need to expand the trail by across Canada, not just in a particular province. So from our existing network, we're continuing to add more greenways, more multi-use shared cycling pathways, as well as, I guess, overall convert some of our current trail that is on roadways to greenways in those communities. And in terms of our international connections, so the Detroit-Windsor Bridge is kind of the first international foray to trail connection that we've had so far. But we certainly are looking forward to other opportunities similar to this in the future.
Can you tell me how you collect that user data? It's quite impressive to say that you have 240 million uses a year. Is that using cell phone data or how's that done? And then also, I'd like to know if you think that internet is a necessity along all trails, or is it sort of seen as a luxury?
So Propulso is based on mobile data. Yes, it is consent-based mobile data. So, you know, somewhere on your phone, you have consented to participation in data collection with your data provider. And so the way that data collection works is actually not essential on having Wi-Fi available because it is based on your cell phone ping, not your cell phone Wi-Fi availability. And so the pings are things that connect with the satellites. It's, you know, GPS signals. And so even if, for example, if I went over to Spain, I put my phone on airplane mode, your phone is still sending pings. You might not be able to make a phone call. You might not be connected to the internet. You know, you might not have that kind of atypical cell phone reception, but you're still sending out pings. And so when I go back to Canada and turn my cell phone back on, that information is still shared with my data provider after the fact. It's still recording your location from those cell phone pings. And so there's a lot of data available, whether or not you have signal or not. So it's definitely not essential on trails, I wouldn't think. I think that kind of question is twofold because if your trail has targeted for tourism, you might want to have Wi-Fi available or public access available for, you know, different resources you might want to provide, like augmented reality or, you know, wayfinding that's non-traditional. Like you might want to have more than one option available for people to look at in those busier areas. But I certainly don't think that Wi-Fi is essential on trails, but particularly for these trail visitation reports, it's not essential at all.
Right. It was two separate questions. On the first one, though, really you're just getting a guesstimate because not every user has a cell phone, particularly in a family, you know, so so I'm not sure how accurate that is. It might be an underestimate, actually, because what you're doing is counting the number of cell phones that are left on. And then I agree with you completely on the internet access issue. It's what you're going to do with the internet. So.
Yeah, just to bounce back there. So yes, Propulso is the, I don't want to say it's the best estimate because it's not an estimate. It is an accurate like count of the cell phones. But yes, it is based on someone needing to have a cell phone or a GPS device with them. It doesn't have to be a cell phone. It could be, you know, a Garmin GPS. It could be a satellite phone. But yes, they do need to have some kind of satellite transmitting device with them.
Rebecca, we had a presentation yesterday about a local project here on Indigenous wayfinding and Indigenous placemaking. And so, of course, you mentioned that all across Canada, there's signs both in English and French. Do you have any Indigenous language signs or any Indigenous placemaking that you could tell us about? Because I know that was one of your, I don't know if that was grants to Indigenous communities, one of your trail funding, but if you could speak to that.
Yeah, so we definitely do have multi-language signage up. We have a number of web maps available as well, and like kind of everything on our public facing that's available where we have the information available for Indigenous resources, pronunciations, naming is available on all of our web resources. On our website, we do have a whole section on Indigenous reconciliation and kind of the acknowledgements and commitments we have that go along with that. Every year we produce an Indigenous reconciliation report that kind of goes over all of the different undertakings that we've done with our First Nation partners. So off the top of my head, I don't know any of the specific examples like where and what kind of signage we have, but we do again through our programs like our signage programs and funding, we provide groups funding where they don't already have it to make sure they have the signage up. And on a regular basis, Trans-Canada Trail kind of actively goes after our network partners to make sure that they have signage to begin with. And so any new signage projects include, all the different languages that are applicable and making sure that we're using the geographical or, traditional language of a particular Indigenous group for that particular trail.
Mark.
I'm just curious how, where you don't have existing trails and there's probably links on existing roadways. I'm just curious how, what rough percentage of the trail system is actually right along roadways where there's no existing off-roadway trails.
I didn't hear that very well. I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry, I'll repeat it for you. So he was asking about, it's a long trail and are some of them, right essentially on roadways or adjacent to roadways as opposed to, a trail going through a more wild landscape? Like is there a large, do you know that off the kind of top of your head, how much is road adjacent?
Yes and no. So we consistently kind of our biggest goal is to move our trail off of roadways. That being said, a lot of our trail is on greenway. In urban areas, we often will find the shared use trails. And so they're not necessarily entirely on roadways. They might have like shared bike paths that have kind of their own buffers before the roadway starts. That's a multi-use kind of makes up a big chunk of our trails. But the roadways, like the right-of-ways with roadways, we are actively working to remove from our network. They're mostly, I would say, found in a lot of the urban kind of major tourism areas where we have those multi-use trails. But I don't know the percentage off the top of my head. We are kind of, we're working really hard every year to remove roadway specific trails. So.
Thanks. Any other questions for Rebecca? Well, again, thank you for stepping in for Michael. We really appreciate you sharing so much. Your website is astounding with all this stuff to go look at. So we really appreciate it. Thanks again. Let's give Rebecca another round of applause.
Yeah, thanks everyone. And again, if anyone has any questions that come up, just feel free to send an email over and we're happy to get you the resources you might be looking for or tell you where to find them if we don't have them.
Wonderful. And I'll get the updated presentation for you and we'll post a PDF on our website so everybody can have those links as well. Thanks again.
Yep, no problem. Have a great day, everyone.
Take care. Bye-bye.